It's thinking about it. Oh, we're
All
live.
right. Welcome, everyone. I'm sure a couple people, more people will join as we go forward. I'll do the kickoff. Welcome to the virtual brown bag. So just a reminder on how this works. Uh, we're gonna have a little bit of a show and tell and talking to our guest Saul about Node today. Then we're going to reserve kind of the latter half of the meeting for anything that anyone else might want to talk about. Though we're happy to keep talking about Node. So again, the meeting.virtualbrownback.com link that you see on the main site that leads you to the view only link. On that site, you can also join our Slack, and if you do, you will be able to join using the participant link. Reminder that these are recorded and automatically posted on YouTube, so don't share anything that'll get you in trouble at work. And yeah, that's about it. So welcome, Saul.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah. You wanna tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, well, you know the first part, most important. Name is Saul. I'm a JavaScript Node developer. I actually work for a company called Higher Education as of recently. I co-manage the Node.js Houston meetup group. Huge fan of JavaScript and Node in general. Been doing Node stuff for a few years now. Was a noob when I started, broke a lot of things. It was awesome. But yeah, that's pretty much me. Married, kids, yeah, that kind of stuff. Pretty
Likes
awesome.
board games, right?
I love board games. I do love me some board games. So JV has one of mine right now, actually.
Hey, you can come pick it up. It's a big hit, and so I'll probably be picking it up. But I got the
Cool.
mobile app too, so I'm cheating, so I get better than my friends.
That automatically makes me want to start like talking about the new one I picked up, but that'll be later. You know, later. So. Besides that, I used to spend a lot of time with Happy on the Node.js server. It's a Node.js server framework. Built some plugins. Yeah, that's anything Node I can do to make the lives of other developers more fun and more enjoyable. Yep, that's what I like to do. So.
I
Awesome.
mean, get me and Saul together. We start chatting, sharing all sorts of stuff. So probably do a lot of that. I think today, just asking questions against feedback because I'm plugged in, polyglots on all these different things, and I always go to Saul to know like what's going on in Node world, and he has opinions on things and it's like not like angry opinions, like I can get angry opinions. They're like happy opinions, and so it gets me excited and pumped whenever I'm talking with him about things. So what about
Well,
Node is getting you super excited about right now? Left pad,
um,
left pad's good, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Actually, April 1st, I saw somebody post something. They were trolling from the Linux Foundation, saying that like left pad was actually going to be in the kernel or something. It was hilarious. Um, so yeah, the left pad stuff's it's a joke, but it's serious. And so it kind of hurt to see somebody have their repo taken away from them. Slightly understandable, but it's still I don't know, a mean move. There you go. That's the nice way to say it. But we are in a business world. We do this stuff on our free time, and sometimes we forget that it is a business world, and there are companies out there who will take advantage of what they need to do to be successful. So make sure you think of yourself and first. I know that sounds kind of selfish, but you do. Besides that, I mean, giving back to the community, just don't get too hurt over things that you could just, I mean, anyway, yeah. So the left pad stuff. Another thing about that, actually, if you read any of the discussions or emails that happened in regards to that, all it took was one person to have one sentence that threw the whole thing off, and then there was enemies pretty much for life, is the way it seems. And if the person who read it in a nicer tone and said, "Hey, the guy actually, automatically assuming he's not really being mean," it would have been a completely different story. I think that's one of the things with developers working on the internet we don't do enough of is actually automatic. We need to start assuming when a person writes something that they're trying to be in a good-natured and positive mindset. But unfortunately, there are too many people who automatically assume the worst and think that the person is actually trying to do harm to them. And anyway. I could rant about that all day. People just need to be a little happier with way they see things. So
A
yeah.
developer safe space. Maybe we can do a startup. Be like right,
Right.
like just because I don't like your library doesn't mean I hate you.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's just because I didn't, comment that, day when you made the pull request doesn't mean I dislike what you did or I don't
Correct.
appreciate it. So yeah, yep, little things.
Well, another thing you mentioned how like you're a little bit hesitant on the happy side. Is there news on that front in terms of like why you're not that enthusiastic? I know you've talked before. Where like, see, we
I
joke around that he's a happy guy, like because hapi.js is huge, but
Well,
like
why don't we
he's trying
start
to
with
run away from being the happy guy. But like,
I just
I'm just curious if
I
there's
don't want to be
something.
labeled, I guess,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
all the time. I'm trying to let people know because I've spent a lot of time with Express compared to Happy. They're both great stuff.
why don't we
Um,
start with what happy is?
yeah.
so,
Fine.
yeah, right. Happy is a Node.js server framework. So that would be to, if you need to do basic, build a website, HTTP, doing gets to the server, maybe communicating with the database from the front end that goes through the server. So it handles templating, authentication, authorization. It's more of a framework compared to Express. Express is also a Node.js framework. But Happy is a step above Express when it comes to features and functionality that are already built in. Like I said, you're gonna it tries to do slightly more, but still stay decoupled. So you could still have a simple server if that's all you need is for just one route, which I've done quite a few times. But it automatically has stuff built in for security. With Express, you'd have to use something like Helmet for the security headers. When it comes to security, it automatically has stuff built in for authentication and authorization for routes. That's not part of Express, and that's okay. Some people want that lower, but I don't want to be rebuilding the same functionality, for all the time. Or I'd rather have the community do it. And unfortunately, with Express, you kind of have the issue of it's Node. You have a million modules out there, and everybody has a different opinion. And it's kind of nice. I mean, if you come from Rails or something like that, some conventions are good. You might slightly disagree with it, but at least it is going to get you a lot further. And it's, Happy's been tested out in the enterprise world by, if you go to the website, you can kind of see Walmart's dog fooded it. You have, the list is on there, Mozilla, Yahoo, PayPal. There's just so many different companies who've used it. I believe PayPal did the Kraken, which was on top of Express, and there's been, about 2 years ago, there were many articles on how, enterprise companies needed more than just Express, and so they were trying to build stuff on top of it. And so Happy tries to deliver all of that to you from an enterprise standpoint. Plugin architecture, improved routing. It's actually much improved routing over Express. If I have an Express server, I can't have two. If I have two routes that happen to be the same route, the server won't start. So you won't have any conflicts. Express had an issue, or sorry, I think it was Yahoo. You know what? I'm not sure which company. It was one of the big companies. Ended up having an issue with Express with the memory leak because they were loading the same route multiple times, and the framework didn't. It just allowed for that. And because the way Happy works, it actually starts up slightly different, but that's kind of another story. It's still just node index on this node server or whatever just to get it going. So it starts just as simple on that, but from a programming standpoint, it actually makes sure all of the routes are loaded first and there's no conflicts, and it actually does some stuff. Then it starts compared to Express, where it starts and you actually don't have any context or insight into the routes. So doing stuff like name routes is actually really hard with Express. And if you have a large 200 to 500 page website, you need named routes for if all of a sudden somebody wants to change a route name, you want named routes. You don't want to have to change that all over the place. There's just so many little pieces with it. Yeah. So
Yeah, I
that's
love
kind of
the
a
input.
nutshell.
The route validation is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
The using joy so that you can validate that certain parameters need to be integers or strings or what the other things they have, and it returns the right response with the right errors. So that's a whole bunch of code that you don't have to
Done.
write, and it just
Yep.
makes sense.
So, and nice, there's actually, I think it's Express Validation is the module, and it adds joy on top of your Express routes. So I had to use that recently, and it allowed me to, I mean, it was easy, it was amazing, it gave me exactly what I needed in Express. So that's, Happy is built of multiple modules, and so you can actually use those with other frameworks. And Joy is one of those that you don't even have to use with the server. You could actually use it in a function if you wanted to validate parameters coming through a function. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've enjoyed it. And then going, yeah, I mean, so Joy, you can do some complex stuff. I mean, yes, you do just string, but you could also do regex, objects, strings, and you could do an array of, you could do a string or an array of strings, because making sure you have validation in your server or for the input that's coming to your server is going to really help prevent any somebody coming and throwing stuff at your server that it's not supposed to handle and that your code was not expecting. So, I mean, because that in a heartbeat will crash your server. Yeah, it'll restart, but all of a sudden they decide to slam that and hit you 30,000 times. You're going to be down for a little bit, so they could easily, take your server down for a while if they wanted to if you didn't catch it. Because I mean, especially if it's a hobby person, that's, you might set up the server, go to work. Next thing you know, you come back and your whole site was, down all day. That's stupid. So if you use Express, make sure you're using validation. It's part of kind of the happy mindset already, but yeah.
That's a good idea to think about, like using Joy to validate on the front end before you send. It'd be kind of interesting because I think it's like we mock up, we set the route on the back end. We say, hey, these are parameters, and generally on the front end we have this API adapter that we're using, or proxy, if you will, and like you just call that function, and then that actually underneath there actually makes a call, and so you're returning promise. You could validate the entry to that function and that could be helpful too. Return right errors. Just an interesting approach I didn't think about.
And I can't think of the library right now, but if you end up like looking it up, there is a module out there that tries to mimic Joy, and it's actually usable in the browser. Joy is it actually pulls in a lot more modules itself because it's intentionally for the server, but somebody else is mimicking it and trying to also put it in for the browser. So which is really handy. I was trying to think, yeah. Let's see if I can find that.
Joy Goose? No.
Right? No. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't think of what it was. But anyway, yeah, so, but validation is so important, and we don't do enough of it, especially as new developers. New developers don't even realize that, and that's, when the community is already doing that and showing examples of it, I try to, when I do have examples of code, I try to show with Joy, so that way it makes things easier for people. So
is Joy just specifically for Happy? Because that seems to be most of the links.
So that's where people use it, but actually Express, I'll get the Express one.
And you can share your screen too.
Okay.
Yeah, go right now.
All right. Let me close all those other links I shouldn't have on. I'm just kidding.
Open up your secrets file for your new job and just.
Yeah, right? I actually just closed that intentionally. So, all right.
I'll just take a screenshot and send it to Eric. Be like, hey, look, Saul shared it with the world.
What he'd say is, that's not what I asked him to work on. Let's see if this is the one.
He works with a good friend of mine, Eric Clemens, he's phenomenal JavaScript developer, just developer in general, but JavaScript too. Like,
he impresses me when I see his stuff. I have to tell him
he makes me feel so inferior every time.
I know, right?
And I'm complaining I don't have enough time in the day, and somehow you
did all this. Out open source modules every day.
Yeah,
when I'm not looking. So so when it comes to validation, here's your validation object right here. I think this is it right here. So you have your validation object, and what you're doing is you have the body, and you're validating the express body. In Happy, it's called a payload, and Express is a body. And you're just saying, hey, email, make sure it's in there, and it's a string, it's required, because they have stuff like credit cards and IPs, and so they have a couple handy string ones. But you could also do regex, so you could set up a password to be regex based off of whatever parameters you want. And then from there, you actually, not the best documentation, but hey, we're all developers, and we already know that's like our problem. So from there, you just pass in that validation object into validate, and it's going to, again, validate on the body these different things. And so now you actually have validation for Express, and it works really well. So again, I try not to knock Express, because you can build something like what Happy does in Express. The problem is there's just, every time I turn around, there's little things about Express that, I mean, it was created at the very beginning. It's lightweight. It's it's nice, but it's just not that. It's not enterprisey. It's not. There's just so many little things that people are doing. There's a great little CMS in Node called Keystone, and I'm really liking the direction that it's going. I'll actually go ahead and share my screen again.
Yeah, because I was about to do the same thing.
Yeah. So Keystone is a Node CMS. It's really simple. Let's see if they might not have. So here's just a picture. You can kind of see is you create these different posts or user objects, and actually where you want to go. What's really cool is, in normal CMS, you would create, like a Drupal or a WordPress, you would create your document, and you would actually create what your document looks like. So if you were maybe creating a car document, you would say it's a car and it has a make and model and all that stuff. Well, in Keystone, they actually have these things called field types, and what they don't map. So they map to your basic types, string, array, object, whatnot. But it takes it a little further, such as, well, you can have a markdown type. Well, and what that'll do is, on the admin side, generate a form. So you actually write code to get your forms and stuff, but it also maps to the database. It's really cool stuff. But so the reason why I mentioned that is they're using Express, and there's actually in a CMS, there's some faults with that. You don't have, there's no plugin architecture. So if you actually wanted to grow it from a module standpoint, you're going to have to build a plugin architecture on top of Express, and then you're kind of getting away from Express. Well, Happy already did that. And then at the same time, if you have multiple plugins as a CMS, and somebody has the auth route and somebody else has the auth route, well, you just broke your server, and this person, who doesn't know this stuff, or who doesn't write tests to validate everything that they put in there, next thing you know, their site's broken. So again, it's a great direction, but Express is not going to work for this from a scaling standpoint of your daily users. Or you actually, this is good for the developer, the Express developer who really knows what they're doing, or the Node developer who really knows what they're doing. Anyway, and so I don't like to knock on Express, because it works and it does some great stuff, but people are not looking at the longer big picture of what, yeah, so that's my rant. Done, mic drop, sorry. Yeah.
Saul's not a hapi.js person. He does everything, guys. No. Because he always has great reasons why. I think one thing kind of gloss over, and I'm going to talk about the validation of the endpoints. One of the things I like about it, and you don't think about, is it not only are you validating the input, your code that handles the requests becomes cleaner, because you know that you have an ID and it is an integer. Yeah. Like there isn't this, oh, well, if the IDs, how do I handle if the IDs undefined, or do this?
Yeah, because you can actually say, hey, email is there. It needs to be a string, or default to whatever, no email or something, and so you can always make sure nothing more would come in. Yeah,
yeah. So it's freeing to know that, hey, I know this is going to be there.
Yep.
Which is
it's like almost adding a test.
Yeah, almost, almost. Well, it
So,
kind of ties into switching from Happy to like talk more React stuff because in the React world, and I'm using Redux and stuff too. Stuff
cool.
is you have to check your inputs and stuff because there's many times where things are going to be undefined or nil or
Yep.
whatever, and so React very much forces you to analyze those edge cases. Otherwise, it's not gonna be like Angular or Ember or I think Knockout is similar. It'll just be like it's just gonna go, oh, this is undefined. It's fine. I just won't show anything. React's gonna be like, I blow up. So yeah.
Well, so hold on, guys. Can one of you describe Redux to me and what it does? Because I have an idea, but I have also have some follow-up questions on that. Someone described it to me last week, and I was like, "Oh, that is so disappointing and a missed opportunity." But I want to hear someone else describe it, and either I'm wrong or that'll lead into a conversation.
All right. So Redux, and I'll go. Saul's pointing at me, so I'm gonna pick it. So, um, so when you have React and React is, I'm going to go from the very, very beginning, and I know that you know stuff, George, but I'm just setting the stage. So React is a great view layer, and it works out fantastic, and it works with the fact that when state changes or props change on a component, it will re-render itself. You quickly, when you start working with React, recognize just by itself that you're like, hey, I need something more than just this view layer to really build a robust application. Um, so Facebook solution was Flux, and they show Flux, and the idea with Flux is that you have, I guess here, let me see if I can do the little quintessential chart. See if I can find it here. And don't search Flux chart. That's not getting you anything that you want. How about that? How about that? That looks good. All right, let me share
You're
this.
not sharing your screen.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
No.
Yes, give it to me. All right, so this I'd say is the universal data flow that was sort of brought with Flux, and that is not a Facebook logo. That looks like a yeah, at least.
That's Atlassian.
Yeah. But I guess there had a blog post and that came up. Anyway,
It works.
it still works. So the idea is that React is this view over here, and so what you have is you have something that manages this state. So Flux's idea was that hey, the views, when the user does something, it creates these actions, and these actions are then dispatched to our stores that have our state, and then let's get rid of this weird thing that doesn't belong here, and when the store's state change, it updates the view. So the idea is this unidirectional data flow, and you can say all day long that it's different than MVC, but it's MVC sort of. With the idea that you have views, and then here these actions for most part can be seamless controller-like, and then your stores are obviously your models that your views are watching. So there's similarities with it. It's the same sort of pattern, but with different terminology. Where Redux comes in is a little bit different than some of the other. There's 5 billion Flux implementations. The reason why there's that many Flux implementations, because if you look at Facebook and they have their little chart, and you look at the Flux chart, you go, yes, I want that. And then you're like, okay, cool. Let me see your implementation. You look at the implementation, what you have to do, and you're like, no, I don't want that.
WTF? Yeah.
you're like, why is there so much boilerplate code? It was really quite crazy. So everyone was like, I want to go make it better. And it was like, in the no JavaScript way, everybody, instead of sitting together and deciding what they want to build, they built 30 different frameworks, and then you just have a framework war until there's only one or two left standing. Which is good. It's healthy. It's just the way they work. It's just when you want to build an app at the time, there's 30 frameworks. It's kind of like, guys, I need a solution that's going to last more than 6 months.
Yep.
So where Redux comes in and how it's a little bit different is on some implementations like Alt, which is one I like. Let's see. That's still around, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. It's a little bit different because from their standpoint, let's see if they have to get started in 5 minutes. From their standpoint, you have a store, and a store is an object that you're listening to. So and it handles, so actions come in and you change your state, and your views will then listen to your store state. So you have these individual stores that pop up all over the place. So Redux, it's different because the way it views the state is how I like is that there's just this massive state tree that you're just observing. And there aren't stores, there's things they call reducers. And all reducers do is listen to an action and adjust that state tree. So if we look, let's see if we can find a good Redux thing, reducer, and let's see if I am here. Yeah, so here, that's sort of not what I wanted, but the code I have is code I can't share. How about that? But so
They have an example folder.
we have example where, yeah. So let's see.
I don't know. I mean,
to do MVC. How about that? So a reducer, you set. So like wrong. Oh, I need a little bit of color, right? Oh yeah, it's big. So you have an initial state. So think of more of your state instead of like an individual object store that Alt would view it as, or some other place view it as like it's just this JSON blob or whatever. And you set up initial state, and then you listen to these actions. So every time an action is broadcast out, it comes in, it gets dispatched, and any reducer can listen to that action, and then you change your state. That's it. And so your views just watch that state. It's very freeing. And
so what's an action?
Like, so it goes from clicking a button to
adding a to-do. Yeah.
Adding to, like, so these are very user specific, but could be very much like, so let's think of example. I wish I could show this stuff, but like showing a drop down. So I was implementing a drop down for
somebody.
Yeah, somebody, something, doing somewhere. Actually, we should drop down, because drop down sort of people are like, oh, it's easy to do. Let's talk modals, because modals is always the UI thing that is just kind of cray-cray. React and modals are awesome. Like, it's like the first thing where it makes freaking sense. So in other frameworks, you might have some sort of library or use jQuery to be like, hey, when they click on this element, do these things. No. So in the React Redux world, the proper way to view that is you have a button, the action would be click the button, and the button could be something you'd call like show confirmation modal. And then the confirmation modal will come inside here, and then in your state, you would change your state to say show confirmation modal is now equal to true. Now in your React view, it goes, hey, if my state is, if show the modal is true, I'm just going to drop this, I'm just going to put this, render this HTML elements.
Oh, great! So, that's finally the thing that I've been saying for like 10 years.
Yeah,
it's like modals, they're just regular and just elements in your HTML, and you use CSS to style them. That's it. That's
True.
The only thing.
False.
Yeah. So like this is
the only thing you need is an escape button handling. That's it.
Right, and so that's what would be like. So then if you wanted to hide it, you'd click a button, and it could be something like close this modal.
Yeah.
And then it would go down.
Have another action for escape modal. Or anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's understand the flow. Like, how is it different, and how to approach it is that way. Like, so I was implementing a feature yesterday.
And by the way, is why I implement my own modals and everything.
Yeah.
No.
Well, understanding to show the modal true and false and how to do that is sort of an eye-opening, changing experience, because it's.
But it has nothing to do with React. That's something people should understand. That's just people not understanding like HTML and CSS. That has nothing to do with React.
Yes, but then like trying to do something like, I'll say an Ember, trying to show modal Ember, it's one of those where it's like.
Why?
Yeah, you're right. I could just show an HTML element in CSS, but that's sort of weirdish, like.
Why? It's not. That's exactly what it is.
True.
All right. Anyway,
and I have used it, and also like I have used it that way, but it does. Yeah. So, but in the React world, the Redux, having that understanding that your state is not just my list of to-dos. The state is my application state. So like you store everything inside there, which some people like, some people don't like. It's sort of a different style. I think it's really great because you basically take snapshots of your app the entire time, and everything that your app isn't doing right now is captured in this state. So I was implementing a feature where essentially you could call paging. So the idea is that you had like a home page, and you have n number of sections, and then you have a final summary page. And so the feature had to be you have a previous button, a home button, and a next button. So enabling and disabling, having those buttons go to the right pages, have them go in order, all that stuff is all managed inside my state. My component that looks at that stuff is, I call it derpy derp. Like it doesn't like it just goes, this is the state you're giving me, and I'm going to display things with this state. It doesn't do, like, if you click on the button, it doesn't even navigate things. Like, that's completely handled someplace else. And where to navigate, it doesn't even know. Like, that's all handled in terms of the state I give it. So, like, the state says, okay, the state next button's route is this, and the disable the next button is false. And, like, all the things that what the state is going to be for that component is, to me, is outside that component is in this reducer. And your component itself is just really straightforward and just follows those things. And so it's a little bit of separation, and that's sort of the style that I'm going with. I think we talked a little bit about Saul, about yay or nay on that in terms of forms, because that's when it gets kind of weird, because from this standpoint, every state in your application, so for your form, if you're typing in your first name, so I'm typing in Jonathan, there's a state capture for each one of those things. So it's JONATHAN, like that's how much state change is happening, and whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but that's sort of where you're like, oh, I didn't think about that, and this eye-opening of, well, yeah, this is sort of buying into it.
You could easily do overkill on it, because maybe you have a menu item, and let's say you have a React component that somebody built before that you've implemented Redux, and it's an amazing menu. It's your header menu drop down as you hover over, things slide in and slide out, and then all of a sudden you implement Redux. You don't need to all the little state of that component. You don't need to put it into Redux just to be proper. Right, the Redux way or something like that, or because it's handy to see the state change in your application and be able to actually look at how it's changing, but you don't always need to go overkill to the point where it's actually hindering productivity. So that's a nice thing, is that it allows for that, though.
Yeah, I think I need to set up a Redux project on my own to.
So let me answer this. Actions are just DTOs, basically, right? They're just simple objects which take some data.
They're basically an object with a string.
All right.
Yep.
And a reducer just aggregates actions. This is kind of brings me to where I was with the conversation that I had last week. I was like, okay, well that's nothing new. That's event sourcing, which we've been doing for 40 years or something like that. And the person goes, well, it's not really event sourcing because the actions themselves aren't stored in a queue. It just stores the state. And even when you do like the time travel, playtime forward, playtime backwards, undo, they're not like popping actions off the store and just playing it back and re-aggregating. Instead what they're doing is they just store previous versions of the state.
Correct.
Why?
Because it's easier.
How is that not a hugely missed opportunity?
It is. You could. It just sounds like you need to make your own Flux framework. That just.
Well, no, that's what I was like, yeah, Redux is the best. Everyone agrees. Right? Redux has won the war. So I automatically I listened. All right, yeah, I automatically assume all right, yeah, they did they finally figured out what everyone CQRS and the rest of the world's been saying about how to do that. And then I'm look at him wait, it doesn't work that way. It makes sense. Right? You store the actions. You create a memento for some for checkpoints so that it doesn't trash performance. But beyond that, it doesn't seem like there would be anything to Redux other than something that fires off a reducer. like and store state,
So
right?
I'm going to play devil's advocate on the event sourcing point of view in
Okay.
terms of not saving state. So this isn't a back end, it's a front end. So back end, it's powerful to be able to replay the events because you could change what those events do, if that makes sense. So that like when someone validates their driver's license or whatever, maybe it needs to kick off certain things. And that changed, and so you want to go back a couple events and then rerun it because these users, we added a step or there's a hot fix or whatever like that. As a front end, you're not doing hot code redeploys of the front end of most of the time, so like there's no real need to replay the events versus the state captures what you need. Like and you're already doing it. It seems like it's an easy solution because if you didn't capture state, you just captured the events. Then you'd have to replay the events and change a state, and you're like, I've already had the state. Like you don't need to replay the event
Well,
because you
yeah.
already have the result.
Well, yeah, you have to replay the events, but isn't the entire premise of React that JavaScript's fast? JavaScript's plenty fast enough in basic operations. So what are we doing?
So it would actually be more code. So you could actually do something like that if you wanted to. So there's another framework called Cerebral.js, which has the same concepts as Redux. Well, when it comes to, it has the big state tree, and then you have your action, you fire off. But what you're talking about is, so if I modify the state tree, that means I have to actually like record how I'm, like, it has to be super simple. Like I can't do any crazy stuff like you can't like reverse a filter very too easily. I mean, without knowing the previous state. So it's easier to just say, hey, what is the previous state compared to, otherwise you'd have to actually write another function, another reducer or something that would actually be a reverser. Because there's certain things you need to know.
No, you don't. You just play all actions up to the point of n-2. I mean, that's basically it. Like you don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like you don't have to play. You don't have to take a step backwards. Just start at the beginning and play them up.
So from the moment someone signs on,
you have
that
Memento
session,
somewhere in there.
yeah. From the moment that session,
Please, like that's not a solved problem. Like that's a solved problem. Yeah, that's what Memento is for.
Yeah.
That's what taking. Yeah, you calculate intermediate steps every once in a while, but I don't know. I guess I'm like a little offended because like there's nothing for the framework to do other than that.
Yeah, it is. It's a very simple idea, but it works. Yeah, the Cerebral looks a lot like what I was going down when I was making my own sort of state management thing that I wanted.
I mean, I wish Cerebral kind of won the war, but at the same time, there's Redux actually. There's a couple of things that Redux does that supposedly. So if you take a normal framework like Cerebral, when it comes to your routes, like you just get one big JSON. But with something like Redux, so one of the things that's becoming popular in the React world is server-side rendering, but at the same time code splitting. So if a person goes to a route, it actually does a JSON HTTP request to get some JSON, pulls it back, and it shows it, and with the data. So it'll grab the data from the server, whatever it needs for that page. So one request for the new route, you get the data you need as well as the view layer, and you call it done, and it's done. And so code splitting is actually much easier with Redux. Otherwise, because right now I'm looking at application sizes of 60 kilobytes and less for a React app. Yeah, I mean, so it's like first page, load, 60 kilobytes, call it done, and it has Redux and it code splitting and everything, compared to you using something like Alt, and you have all your libraries. Because of the way the stores work, like you actually need to load up, anything that manipulates those stores ahead of time. Compared to with Redux, it only pulls in the code that it needs to. I haven't dove into it enough to actually point out exactly how, because I'm actually doing it this week, is building out a a server that does that, but I've played around with them and looked at them, and it's really pretty sweet to have, a full-on. You could have at that point, you could have a 500-page website, and it still loads. It's 60 kilobytes on that first load. I mean, that's amazing, rather than it cumulatively getting larger and larger to the point of, hey, look, we have a 300-page website. We have all these interactions and stuff, and we're at 1.5 MB. Like, it is only growing. So from a technology standpoint, it's also, yeah, everybody's kind of, but I agree with you. Once you learn Redux, you're like, that's it? I thought this was like, I mean, it has like
easy to learn, hard to master.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah,
layers,
which is good. Is good. Yep.
All right, we've drifted a little bit. I think it's probably time to open it up to the group and see if anyone else has anything they want to address or talk about.
We also haven't heard from Claudio in like weeks.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah. Does anybody here want to ask about anything or talk about something? Introduce some concept.
Well, apparently, yeah.
So
oh,
his internet connection is bad, so. Yeah.
Then I guess we keep going.
Let's keep on going. Ha ha ha. So.
Dangerous.
We're going to change a little subject because I know things that Saul's passionate about, so I'm going to do another one. Another thing he's passionate about, not only Node, is the idea that JavaScript front end, back end, same language. So make your pitch onto why that matters. I've heard it.
Yeah. So
you know that I don't believe it, but that's fine.
I know. Come saying this on deaf ears.
Yeah.
So JB, you and there's a lot of developers out there who've been developing for 10 plus, 15 plus years, 20 plus years, right? And these developers are used to 5 different languages, 7 different languages. The day that they actually had to learn CSS, they wanted to shoot themselves. So if you're a new developer, and you say, hey, you know what, I want to get into this world of building applications. Well, anytime anybody's building any application now, it's JavaScript. Yes, you can use server-side stuff fully, but majority of the time, people are wanting that more dynamic, sexier, attractive look. They want those the animations or the slide-ins. So I mean, you're dealing with JavaScript. It's going to happen, or Flash if you're still into stuff like that. Most people aren't.
Lord, who's doing Flash?
I know it's a joke.
If you're really into Cold Fusion, there's some sweet gigs out there for you.
Oh yeah, and that's yeah, whatever. Good luck. I enjoy that.
Hey, prediction: 3-5 years from now, Claudia is going to be working 100% in Fox Pro and making 5 times what we do. Because they're like, we have this Fox Pro app, and no one knows how to do it like Claudio.
It's probably true.
It's funny.
I like teasing him since he can't respond.
Yeah, damn you guys. The time I was gonna unmute myself, the phone started ringing. It's like, oh crap.
A Fox Pro guy, right? They're like, hey, we need some help.
Right, yeah.
So at that point, there's actually people who are working on Cold Fusion to JavaScript. So that, like, converters, I mean, actually, like, read the Cold Fusion and say, hey, here's the JavaScript for it, and actually put it in Node. But anyway, that's kind of, those are rumors that I've heard. Anyway, for JavaScript, I'm a huge fan of JavaScript on the server side. Because you take any team you take a team of 7 developers and you say, hey, these are the 3 front-end developers. They do the HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript. And then you have the back-end developers. They handle scaling, and then the the PHP or the the Go or the Elixir or whatnot. A front-end so if you have that Go person and he's doing the back end, he's only doing Go and database queries. That's kind of like his thing. The front end person is learning HTML, CSS, Less, Sass, React, Redux. I mean, like, the list keeps on going on and on and on. And yes, there are yes, there are libraries for the back end as well. So don't get me wrong, but the front end is it's a pretty messy area. JavaScript has its has its points of his pain points. CSS has its pain points. So there's a huge burden for the front end already. And so it takes a front-end person to really, it takes them a while to kind of get up to that level of feeling confident enough, and then at the same time, usually they're learning so much they don't have enough time to really dive into the back end and learn that as well. And so now you have a actual split, and that besides just having people who are always used to doing the back end, I mean, they're always going to, whoever is more specialized in it. So now you have a divide. In a good team, this actually doesn't hinder. And I've been on a team where we had 5 different people on the team. We all had something else that we were special at, and we were slowly learning over the course of a year and a half things from each other. And near the end, we were all doing it all. But at the same time, it took us a while to kind of get to that point. And if you've been on but that I was a very fortunate situation because we all had great communication. We always went out to lunch and always discussed things and tried to learn from each other. But I've been on many teams, or I've seen many teams. I've been on a couple of teams where there's actually a huge divide between the back end and the front end. Not even kind of funny, but it's like, hey, front end guys, don't even touch the code on the back end. We'll just give you what you want, and then it's never what they want. It's just what the back end guys are going to give them at that time. And then there's this divide, and so having that divide is tough. And I even at company, well, anyway, yeah, it's that big divide is huge. Learning new language isn't that hard, but when it comes to the front end developers or people who are doing that, they're already in JavaScript and it works that well. On top of that, Node does scale. Node is pretty awesome. It's very powerful. It's something that any front-end developer is starting to learn nowadays. And being able to have your front-end people and the back-end people be able to work together and handle each other's having the back-end person be able to go to the front-end because he's comfortable in JavaScript, because I've seen him say, well, you know what, I'm not that comfortable in JavaScript. And I was like, well, if we actually had JavaScript on the front-end and the back-end, this wouldn't be a problem. Oh, look, somebody called in sick. Oh, look, somebody won the lottery. It's
how often does that happen?
I know. Whatever. Right? How many times have you seen it when somebody left the company who actually had knowledge of stuff that now somebody else has to learn? And so not just kind of a little bit, but that's so common where somebody says, hey, you know what? I want to bring in this technology into the stack. All right, what are the benefits? And all of a sudden they do that, and maybe it's 2 developers, and then over the course of 2 years, those 2 developers leave. Now you have old technology because nobody else knows it or wants to touch it, even though it's new technology because it's hot and it's Elixir, but you still have the other developers not using it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of, yeah, so. That's my rant.
So
likes Node.
Oh no, I'm gonna get ripped. Okay.
So it is kind of trying to use a technology to solve a non-technology problem, because everything that you just said is not a technology problem; it's an organizational problem. But here's my bigger point, and it's one that actually I've been making a lot lately when talking about interviewing and stuff like that. The mindset of front-end development is different from the mindset of back-end development. Knowing the syntax is a very, very small part of it. It's more about knowing how to think about performance. There's different ways you think about code reuse on front ends, on the back ends. I mean, a front end, if you're doing C# WPF, you're still a front-end developer. If you're doing hardcore, data analysis, but in JavaScript, you're still a back-end developer. And we say that because those terms, they actually mean something. They mean this is my specialty in terms of how I think about things, or how, I like to say that front-end developer generally means that you haven't been developing that long, but they are that. They are different things because they're different mindsets. And I think that your back-end developer is out for the day. Having a front-end developer jump in and do stuff that is really a recipe for the backend developer coming in and the next day and be like, well, none of this is going to perform well at all.
Well, you're right. So you just validated my point, actually. So if all of a sudden you have your back-end developer out and you have your front-end developer not know what he's doing, and just only know the syntax, but never actually works in it, and he goes there, he's going to screw it up probably. And compared to, hey, by the way, we actually have multiple developers who actually do front-end and back-end, and we're all very comfortable in this. You know, he hops in because the guy's sick. He's actually already comfortable. I mean, yes, you're right on the fact that a lot of front-end developers, that's where you start, and so you have less experience, and that's generally true. But
yeah, that's not what I say. I say that because like front-end developer, announcing yourself as a front-end developer is only a thing that's been around for like 5 years or so.
George's standpoint on front-end developers. Yeah, front-end developers are George.
Yeah,
are these little tweeners with skateboards jumping all over his yard, and they're like, you don't even know. Go get a haircut. Get out here.
My yard, my skateboards. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, it just hasn't been around that long. So,
yeah,
obviously.
But unfortunately, I've seen quite a few back-end developers who are really crappy.
Sure.
Sorry, I don't know what I'm allowed to or not, so I'm trying not to say anything bad. But yeah,
keep it appropriate for YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. We just got the R rating, Saul. Anyway, but yeah, like I've seen. I mean, they don't understand security. They don't understand browser security. Like they know how to handle their database and they know how to make things a little performant and scale, right? So, and again, I believe in if you can have a technology lower the barrier when it comes to both parties working together and having more of a code share as well as a communication. And that's what I see Node as more of a business opportunity to help the developers and people get closer together. And that's what I've seen over the past couple of years compared to having. And even if it's a 5% separation, 5% separation over the course of 2 years between 10 developers actually is 5%. If you can increase the productivity or the communication by 5%, there's companies who'd spend millions of dollars for stuff like that. And that's kind of, I see Node as more from a business standpoint, makes so much sense when it comes to developer communication. And that's where, I mean, you can't beat that. But again, you could have a team of all rock stars, and you can afford the full team of rock stars, and they already know 5 different languages. Adding another one's not going to hurt, and they're not going to leave you anytime soon. And like there are things you could probably do, but even then, like people will get bored. And they're like, you know what, I want to do my own startup, or I want to go try this for a while. I mean, that's why there's some developers who will go on a hiatus for 6 months to a year and travel or something like that. But anyway, like that's another. But
clearly, developers got paid way too much because
so hold on.
I got bills to pay in 6 months.
I absolutely agree. Lowering the however much you lower that impedance mismatch, sure, lowering it any amount is fine. Now let's get to kind of the other point. I'll drop the big bomb. Look, we all do JavaScript a lot here. I have packages on npm. I speak on JavaScript. All right. So I think we, as people that actually do a lot of JavaScript, we're allowed to say this: JavaScript sucks as a language. I do believe it'll be replaced by, once WebAssembly gets going, it will be replaced by a lot of different languages. But, I mean, like, as a language, how much do you really want to put all your eggs in that basket?
And I agree with that. I'm not saying JavaScript. So I'm excited.
Right, we can't tell other people we think that. But
right. Yeah.
But ES6, man.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's getting better. It's great. But you have all these other languages that are better. But unfortunately, they're not both on the server and the front end. You do have a couple that do it kind of, and, and people could argue that, that there are a couple that are, you have ClojureScript on the front end and on the back end and stuff like that. But still, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be dealing with the JVM personally. Like, it's for my server side.
That's fair.
And so, I mean, if somebody came up and said, hey, by the way, I'm interested to see what Elm does, and if they end up doing something on the, say, hey, here's a Elm to Node, and we created, functional reactive programming on the back end, and so it's the same syntax front and back. That's kind of interesting, and I do believe that is something that could happen, but that's going to take a couple years before the traction hits. When I say couple, I mean like a year and a half, minimum. But at that time, it's like, hey, we finally have this language that will, actually is a better language for, X, Y, Z reasons. And hey, let's, try to, and now we have it on the front and the back end. It'll take a little bit to get going, but at that point, it's cool. I mean, it just makes sense for people to be able to communicate on the same level. There are definitely times when you could easily have something that, not everybody knows how to write Bash, or shell scripts, right? And you might have one of those in the directory. You're still going to have things, but having your base application as Node and or JavaScript, and your front-end application as JavaScript, if you have people, the person who's sick, maybe he can take a phone call from the hospital for whatever reason and says, hey, just make sure you do this and, or that, it's not completely foreign to the front-end guy. I don't know. I don't know. I believe in communication from a people standpoint and business standpoint. And if I could just hire JavaScript developers and that was it, that would make life much easier than, all right, I'm going to need 2 PHP guys. I'm going to need a guy who really understands Apache. I need a Linux system administrator for sure, a really good one, specifically only that. And then I need two front-end guys, and I need one at least who's really amazing in CSS. And in this way, it's like, hey, they're all JavaScript developers, but they all have their specialties they can bring together to help each other. And I like that idea.
So what about the React Native stuff? I don't think I've talked to you about that. What's your take on that?
It's hot.
Because then you're like, now I have JavaScript guys doing mobile apps.
Well, I know. Well, you have React Native, and you have there's also another one. It's like JavaScript Native. It's also out there, and they're doing that. You have Electron. So hey, you want a desktop application? Bam, Electron. And that's exciting. It's like, hey, I could build a website that manages my wife's database, which is just CSV files for her, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And you can say, hey, let me just write this little thing. And that's a person who's maybe just getting started. We're not talking almost brand new, and they just kind of want to dive, and they have a problem. They don't have to write. They're able to learn kind of one general area, which would be like Electron and JavaScript. And next thing you know, they could actually say, wait a second, I could also build a website that's a little more interactive for XYZ person. And next thing you know, we have one more developer who has power in helping. Because right now, we don't have enough developers in general. The really good developers are taken, or it takes a while to get them. And there's so many young developers that so I meet with quite a few young developers with like the Iron Yard, and I see all these young developers, and they're striving, they're trying to go, but they're in a completely different world and mindset compared to the old school people, and it's because they have so much on their plate and burden, and we're actually, by adding more to their plate, we're only hurting. And whatever we can do to improve, even on normal node modules or libraries, you have this issue of the API, or how to use the module, is really complex, and it needs to just be simpler, so that way not just younger people, but anybody who comes to it can actually use this, at first sight, not having to. The first time you see Redux and you hear about it, like you actually start reading the stuff on it, you're like, really? I do not get this. And then you're just like, all right, when I actually have a few moments to actually read the documentation, try to understand it, I will. I mean, how do you think a new person who's coming into programming all of a sudden was told, hey, build your application in React and Redux, and they go in there and be like, what the heck? I mean, this is completely foreign and new to them. But anyway, sorry.
Event
Reactive,
sourcing, though,
yeah.
Saul, event sourcing. They know.
Well,
I'm
well,
Yeah.
I'm with you on the.
well, I mean, I was just saying that's. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, me? No, I was just gonna say I'm all over it with Saul. I'm on the team Saul over here.
Damn it.
As a young company and a relatively new developer, that's the reason we're based on Meteor. We'll specifically know JavaScript on both ends, and not having a lot of funding, I've been through a number of contract guys, 7 or 8 guys over a year and a half, 2 years, and the ability for the new guy, somebody new, to come in and pick up where the last guy left off, it's, for a small startup, has been a real benefit. So,
yep.
Team Saul, there you go.
I have a side project. I'm using Meteor for the same reason, because I have new people new to this space, and I'm like, instead of having different languages or even have 2 different projects, I was like, we're just going to do it in Meteor, because then we can focus more on what we want the app to do and not worry about anything else. So some of those decisions are made, and the scale of it is like not such that we need to worry about, oh, but what if 50,000 people come to the site? And 50,000 people are never going to be coming to this site.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing about our app is it's 1,500 people maybe tops. So.
Yep. That's perfect.
Nobody has 50,000 people. Like, actually, I did want to bring this up because I
CC'd that comment to Twitter.
No. Here's the thing. Because I had, I talk to a lot of new people. I interview a lot of Hack Reactor graduate and so on. And I know exactly what you're talking about, Saul. So I'm not even really disagreeing with you. Well, I had one yesterday. I've heard this over and over again. Say like, I just want your advice. I feel like, the big hole that's missing for me is like, I don't know how to work with applications at scale. I don't know how to handle like something that has like 1 million users, or hundreds of thousands of simultaneous collections, or MapReduce. It's like nobody has to do that. Netflix has to do that, and even then, it's like one guy at Netflix. His name is Magnus. Like he's like sits in the top of a building. Like he's like the guy that reads binary bit strings. Like that's the guy that does that. Nobody else has to do that. It's like your problem. That's not your biggest hole. Your whole biggest hole is writing code that's later going to be read and worked on by people. Like that's it. That's. Yeah, and like working on other people's code. Yep. Like that's your big. Go do open source, and that's not perfect, but it's at least something.
All right. Well, it is past our time, and it just means that now. Yeah, Saul gets one more comment, and then it just means we have to have you later on.
Cool. I'll have to come back. This is fun. So for the Meteor aspect, it is cool. They're actually, I don't know if y'all know this, they're breaking it out and they're like putting it on NPM. And they're actually, it's going to, it's actually trying to join the Node ecosystem better. So that was just a small comment since y'all mentioned, but yeah, which is exciting. Anyway, yeah. Sorry.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that and let me know what it happens.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Saul. Really appreciate it coming over here and good chat. See, I told you, you don't even have to be prepared. We just sit there and we'll just talk all day.
Talk to you all next week.
Yeah. All right, guys. Talk to y'all later.
Awesome.
Hey, guys.